No one trusts ads anymore, not even us. And we live in marketing. But you know who people do trust? Creators, friends, Reddit threads. With impact.com, you turn trust into traffic by turning your fans into marketers.
Welcome to the Marketing Millennials, the No BS Marketing Podcast. I'm Daniel Murray, and join me for unfiltered conversations with the brains behind marketing's coolest companies. The one request I tell our guests, stories or it didn't happen. Get ready to turn the up.
Today on the podcast, we've got Carly Lieberman, creative director at Sharma Brands, my wife Ari's best friend, and the creative force behind some of the highest converting ads in D2C. We recorded this one last year, but the insights are still relevant today. Carly breaks down what makes performance creative actually work. From writing better briefs, to aligning ads with landing pages, to why lo-fi might just beat your next big brand shoot. If you want creative that sells, not just looks good, this episode is a must listen. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Millennials. Today I have a special guest, Carly Lieberman, my wife's best friend, co-worker, creative director at Sharma Brands. Some people might know Sharma Brands that listen to this, but Carly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Daniel. That was quite the introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a big fan of yours and obviously of your wife. And yeah, excited to chat.
I want to first go in and let everybody know, how did you get into marketing? And then we'll get into the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. So I actually didn't start off my professional career in marketing per se, and I really had no interest of marketing. I went to Penn State for undergrad and graduated in the communications field, but more focused on public relations. And all of my internships leading up to my first job were all in public relations. And I graduated with a job in public relations, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was destined for. Quickly realized that I didn't love PR as much as I thought I initially did, but I didn't really know what my next move would be. So I was kind of sticking it out, trying to figure out if there were pieces of PR that I did like, and I did find that the digital side of PR versus the traditional was more of interest. But in April of 2020, my company had some massive layoffs due to COVID, and I was unfortunately a part of that. So obviously thought my life was over at the ripe age of 23, but I think it was a blessing in disguise because it kind of gave me that kick in the direction to find something new and kind of start over. My friend from college, Bailey Cooper, who's a near and dear friend to this day, had started working with Nick Sharma at Sharma Brands in February of 2020. And so when I was looking for a new job, she was like, hey, would you be interested in trying, marketing for direct to consumer brands? And I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And 3 years later, I've been working at Sharma Brands ever since. And yeah, that's kind of my marketing story.
Love it. I think everybody goes through ups and downs in marketing and figuring out what they're good at. But you, from what I know and seeing your work, and then already telling me you're great at creative director. So I want to go into that a little bit. For people who don't know, what does it mean to be a creative director? And then we'll go into some strategies you think about.
I guess a creative director could mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people and different companies. But for my company in particular and part of our DTC, growth community, what I am in charge of is the creative behind the paid ads, so the performance ad creative. And I lead a team of really, really talented video editors and graphic designers. And so my day-to-day job consists of briefing and strategizing ad creative for our clients, working with the growth team to make sure that we're we're producing the best performance creative possible from a data standpoint, working with the design team to make sure that we're always creating ads that pair back to the landing pages that they design for our clients. And then within my team, I brief out the ad type, the style, if it's a promotion, if it's evergreen, all the details kind of that would be needed for a particular ad, relay it to my team, and they go off and they're, like I said, incredibly talented. They, depending on the type of ad creative it is, it'll be an animation, a video edit, UGC, a static, all sorts of stuff. They'll design that creative. We'll go through feedback rounds, make sure it's really solid, and then we deliver it off to our client, make sure the client approves, and then we send it off to their paid teams, or their media buying teams, and then the ad is released into the wild.
What goes into a great ad? What elements, when you're getting a brief or get a client asking you, make me an ad, what are some elements you're thinking about to make a great one?
I wouldn't say there's an exact formula for a quote unquote great ad, because a lot goes into what makes an ad great. There are a lot of different factors. For example, like the spend behind it. Is the ad leading to a landing page that only shows the product that's within the ad? And is the customer journey really efficient? So there are a lot of other things that play into the performance of an ad, but for a specific ad creative, you want to make sure that, one, you understand the audience that this is going towards. You want to make sure you understand the brand, but you also want to make sure you understand the brand in the lens of growth versus someone from like the client's brand team, which is often a point of contention for us because someone on the client side brand team is super strict on, does this match our branding? Is this super on par with who we are as a company, like our exact fonts and colors and styles and graphics? And they're very strict on making sure it's on brand, but sometimes what's on brand that you would find on like the website or the organic social isn't necessarily what would perform on paid, because people that know the brand already might love to go to their social because they're already fans and they're part of that audience. But for someone that like cold traffic that's seeing this brand for the first time, they might not understand, they might not care. They might need something different than just, showing what the product is. They need more information. And our job is to mesh what's on the brand side and also through the lens of paid, because we need to find that balance.
A lot of people make the mistake that an ad needs to be perfect. It needs to have exactly what elements of a brand, their brand guidelines, their brand elements. But the point of an ad is to educate, to inform, to ultimately get someone to say, hey, like I have this pain or I need this product, not, hey,
that's pretty.
This is so pretty. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our job. And it's certain clients, it's easier to do that because they understand the point of what we're trying to accomplish. And at the end of the day, that's just trying to make them money. But some clients will have a little bit of a harder time. And especially in this day and age, we're finding so often that more like lo-fi, not so high production ads are working better, which can kind of be daunting from the client side because they're like, wait, this feels off for us, or I don't know if this is going to work well. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the data and the sales. So that's another point, is we have to just constantly be testing and trying new things. And we can't be scared of trying something new just because it quote unquote might be off brand.
And I think that's a great point. I think one thing that I know, especially internally, that people do is, okay, you want to do this thing on brand, but let's test the on brand versus the creative that I think, and to see which one produces the most sales. And then we can like use the data to decide yes or no for brand on brand, instead of saying, no, this is off brand. Let's let the market do the talking. And I think that's the best way to get someone who, at least you're trying what they're saying. that they think is going to work, but you also had to put it against something that you think is going to work so you could prove out the results to the client. So I think that's a very great way of thinking about doing ads, especially talking to a brand team who is strong with their brand guidelines and their brand playbook and everything like that. When you're thinking about the copy of an ad, what are some different pieces of the copy that needs to be in an ad to make sure that it portrays the right message to the audience?
Well, I mean, it also depends on the type of ad and the angle that we're pushing. So, for example, we have a client right now where we're trying to test out 4 different audience angles. So, for one type of audience, it might matter more to them that like this piece of convenience for the product and it'll make their life super easy. One angle of the audience might appreciate more that they're going to save a lot more money, and that's the angle we'll be trying to push more in an ad versus someone that's really excited that it's going to taste really good and that's all they care about. So it kind of depends on the type of ad and then also the audience that we're pushing it out for. So then once we kind of get that understanding in the brief level, then when we go and create the ad and create the copy, we'll just want to make sure that we're constantly hitting those key points that drive home that main messaging goal. And then, of course, I guess it's part of the copy, but not necessarily copy, but we have to make sure that we're explaining to the audience what this brand is and what the product is. It doesn't have to be so black and white, like, this is tequila, but as long as they know who this ad is coming from and what exactly they're being shown, we just have to make it clear because we can't afford any confusion, especially if an ad is only 15 seconds long. And then, of course, another key point is if there's any promotion involved. So a lot of offers will be like a first-time offer, like 15% off your first order, or 20% off when you buy 2, whatever it is. We just want to make sure that the offer is really clear in the copy, and usually in the beginning of an ad, because that will also ensure that obviously everyone knows you're scrolling. You don't really spend a lot of time looking at things, and especially through the entire length of an ad because you see so many during the day. So we want to make sure that the most important information is at front. That way there's no chance that someone could miss it.
The way I interpret that is, one, make sure the message is clearly delivered of what the product does or like what the key benefit of the product is. 2, make sure that they know if there's an offer or promotion, what that promotion is. And if that's the main part, there needs to be a good offer involved. And 3, it's conveying enough information so people know enough things to be like, this piques my interest. Let me go look for more.
Right, exactly. And that's also why it's important to have a landing page behind an ad, because if you click on an ad and it drives you directly to a home page, it's really easy for the customer to get lost in that journey versus if they get sent to a landing page, it's super clear, it's super direct. There's only one place to shop exactly what you saw in the ad. So the ad is kind of like we're sort of teasing you into more information and trying to spark your interest right off the bat. And then when you click, you get everything that you need in that one spot from the landing page. And it's super easy for you to make that purchasing decision.
So you've made a great ad. How do you make sure the ad aligns with the whole experience, the landing page, the product that's being shown? How is it? Is that part of the brief? How do you work with are you part of the landing page, the copywriting part? How do you know how to align those two points?
Yeah. So, as I said, Bailey Cooper is our director of design, and she works with the design team, and the landing pages and websites that they produce are out of this world. So it's always a pleasure to work with Bailey as well as Ari Murray. I think you know her. She's our chief growth officer. And we like to have a meeting, the 3 of us, sort of like ahead of the next month to align on all of our clients going into the month. And that way we can sync up on all the landing pages and ads that we're going to then deliver in the weeks to come. And by doing that, we're able to create ideas together. So that way we have an ad for every landing page. Every landing page has an ad, because the whole point of doing both together is creating that efficient funnel for the customer. Because if you get served an ad that shows, I don't know, a water bottle, and then you're sent to a homepage that has 10 other products and you can't even find the water bottle that you just saw, you're going to be like, screw it, I'm not buying. Or if you get sent a white water bottle and you get sent to a PDP of a black water bottle, you're going to be like, I didn't want the black, I wanted a white. So we want to make sure that everything that's shown in an ad is super clear, and then whatever that ad leads to is really clear on the landing page. So the three of us work together to develop the kinds of promotions and offers and ideas we want to set forward to the client, whether that's like a bundle offer or sort of like an evergreen page, or maybe like a founder's story page, whatever kind of angle we can push for the specific brand and product. We'll come up with those ideas. Again, make sure we have the pairs of ads and landing pages, and then coupling that with the performance of previous work. Like, we know, for example, that a founder story works really well for a lot of our clients. So we'll want to test this for a new client. Or, for example, we want to test 2 different types of bundles at different percentages off to see what's more effective. A whole mix of things, basically. And that way, once we set all of those up, we can then brief them out, go to our clients, explain our thought process, and get it approved by them. And that way, once we go into design, of both the landing page and the ad, we know that we are kind of on that path together.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. I think aligning with the key stakeholders as well as the client, if you're an agency, is really important. Also, the one thing that I think is a great key takeaway for people is that always be testing different things, whether it's, okay, a founder story has worked for me before, but will work for this client. A bundle has worked for me before, but will work for this client. This offer has worked before. At the end of the day, if you're just running, you can't just come up with one thing. You have to come up with multiple things to test to make sure that, hey, for this client and this audience, this is going to work. So I think that's really important, and a key point I just want to keep bringing out to everybody, that make sure in ads, you're always experimenting, testing, make sure you're testing different things. And there's different elements you could test. And you've said multiple elements. You said there's the different products being shown, there's different offers being shown, there's different ways of portraying information versus, or like benefits, or there's different personalities that could be, whether it's the founder or UGC or stuff like that. So all these elements could be tested to see if they work with your audience. So make sure you do that. And you can go look at Carly's work, if she's done a great job of doing that. So what are some ads that you're most proud of that you've created?
Here's the truth, marketers. People don't pause their scroll for ads. They stop for people. A product review, a creator story, a quick tag from someone they follow. That's why smart brands use impact.com to turn fans, affiliates, and creators into their real growth engine. You don't need another polished ad. You need trust. Build trust where it matters. Impact.com.
It's really interesting, especially working at an agency type environment, to be constantly working with so many clients at once. And especially like the lifetime of our clients. We're not like an agency that holds on to clients for 5-10 years at a time. They're all like constantly flowing, and it's nice to be able to work with so many different types of brands, which is also difficult at the same time, because while you don't ever get that fatigue, you constantly have to switch your mindset, because one day you'll be working on a women's supplement brand and the next day you'll be working on, pots and pans, and everything is different. And while you can apply similar learnings and ideas, obviously it's never going to look the same. So I'm just proud of Like I said, my team is incredible and the work that they produce is unmatched. Some of my favorite ads, I guess, that we've done for clients like Chamberlain Coffee, we created a really amazing birthday cake launch ad for their birthday cake coffee SKU, and that one was a winner. What else? We've done a lot of amazing work for Hexclad cookware, especially during their like President's Day sale. Our ads crushed for them. Via Carota Craft Cocktails. We helped launch that brand. That was really cool, especially being a New Yorker. And we came up with some really interesting creative for them to highlight like their press and, you know, that native New York vibe. Yeah, I don't know. It's fun to, especially being at Sharma Brands for 3 years now, the stuff that we were doing in the beginning versus where we are right now. It's exponentially more advanced, and I don't know. I'm always impressed by what my team can produce. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to go into also is because I think a lot of companies mess this up when briefing a creative team. So, what are some elements that people should include in a brief to make sure that a creative team has all the information that's needed to produce what you're looking for? Because I think a lot of people just say, "Hey, create me an ad." And the ad needs to look like this, and there's like no information. So, like, what should go into a brief?
Yeah.
For a creative team?
That's definitely something I've learned over time because working with my team, my goal is to just make their jobs as easy as possible. That's kind of how I look at the briefing process. It's what can I do up front for them that will make the actual development of the ad creative super seamless. And since I'm really the only one of my team that's client facing, I have to do all of that work beforehand to make sure they have all of the information, all of the assets, all of the fonts and colors and brand guidelines that they need. So I create a brief. I kind of split it out by client, and then we have holistic, I would say, creative briefs that include ads and landing pages, which we found to make things like super buttoned up and organized on our end. But then within these briefs, I have everything from the type of ad, so whether it's UGC or an animation or a static. And then I have what, if there's a promotion or an offer involved, like is it, 20% off? Is it $50 you get free shipping? Any sort of, incentive there. And then I make sure they have the messaging. So is this like, a women's health focused ad that needs to be more in tune to like pregnancy, or is it for a cookware brand? Is this to talk about, it's non-stick, so you don't need so much oil, which makes it you're cooking a lot healthier, or something like that. So making sure they have the messaging that they need, and then I'll oftentimes write up quick copy for them if that's helpful. So I can write up a headline or any of the value props that they need to be included, or if there's like a specific CTA that the client wants mentioned, I'll write that out. And then, just if there's specific assets that need to be used for the creative, or for the most part, visually, I like to give my team creative freedom because, they're the creatives. They kind of should have the liberty to make those decisions. But if I can just make their lives easier, like I said, going into it, that's kind of what I try to do. And then, of course, that's the brief stage, but then I always make sure that I'm available for brainstorming or to hop on and kind of like workshop an asset live to make sure that they're on the right track. And
yeah, I think two things that I also got out of that is one thing is make sure they have all the information up front, from fonts, from brand guidelines to promotion to what the ad's about, who's the audience targeting, what the client's looking for. That's number one. But the second thing is also, those are just guardrails. The rest is up to the team to do what they do best and be creative. And I think that's a part that a lot of people mess up, is like, someone shouldn't just tell a creative team to just do something. It's, hey, here's what we're thinking. You come up with the best creative.
And like sometimes you provide inspo, or sometimes there's an instance where like, yes, we really just want to kind of mimic what we've already done here. But more often than not, I'm like, here are the pieces of the puzzle, but you have to put it together, and I trust them implicitly. So I think the work also turns out better if you're giving these people the room to think creatively. Otherwise, why would you use a creative team and not just like a robot?
Yeah, I mean, just go put what you think and just say go into Canva or Figma and try doing it
Right.
yourself, or use AI these days. But like a creative team is like one of the that's why they call it a creative team, because they're supposed to be creative and use creativity. So another question I have for you that I like to ask everybody in this podcast is, what is a marketing hill you would die on?
So it's funny, like talking about being creative and having creative opinions and, certain things you think look good versus certain things you might not think look good. But at the end of the day, those opinions don't really matter. What matters is the data. And I definitely had to learn that the hard way, because certain times I'd be like, oh, like, I just love how this looks. But then the growth team would be like, yeah, it looks great, but the same way you did that static in the last batch, it didn't perform well. So we just don't think you should, do it again. And you have to kind of take that and run with it, because the data is the only right answer, essentially. So that's why we work really closely with our growth team, because we never want to make the same mistake twice. And that's as much as like if we go to a client and we want to test something and they say, oh, you know what, UGC doesn't work for us. But I don't think you should ever say that anything doesn't work for you, or, this always works for us, because you can always iterate things, and something that always works for you might not work this time, or something that never works for you might work this time because you tried something new. And that's only to be found out through data. It's not just like your own opinions. So that's why, like we were talking about before, we always have a media mix, because we're constantly trying new things and testing new things to see what's effective versus testing new things with the intention of eliminating. Because say your UGC ad doesn't perform this time, but there could be so many other factors that went into why that didn't perform well. Was there no offer? Was the messaging super unclear? Was there no real hook? Was there no clear call to action? Was there no landing page behind the ad? There are so many other things that you can change before you say, this didn't work for us, so we're not going to do it again. You should always be trying new things and new ways to do the same thing, because you could continue to keep learning and keep iterating and then find more ways to make that asset work.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I love that you said is, at the end of the day, like, the main goal of a business is to like put revenue through the door. And especially for like early stage business, or even most stage businesses, like the first goal, like 80% of what they do is going to end up being revenue generating campaigns, to make sure 20 to 30% end up being brand and stuff like that. And knowing like the goal of this ad is to sell. It's not to make people aware that our brand exists, and it's not a brand awareness campaign. It's to sell. It gives you more perspective of saying, okay, yeah, I have to put my creativity aside and say, okay, maybe I should do a lo-fi ad, like you said before, because it might perform better. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should change this. Maybe I should do an offer, because at the end of the day, what matters is if it sells or not. So I think that's a perfect way to put it. And I think a lot of people make this mistake. I've worked with teams that have made this mistake a lot of times, where they too focus on the brand and not focused on what the actual goal is, which is revenue through the door. So lastly, I want to ask, where could people find you?
I guess you could find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, even though I like to observe more than I like to post. And I obviously my work and my team's work at Sharma Brands. And yeah, I'm not really active on Twitter, but like I said, I like to consume a lot. So feel free to DM me on Instagram if you have any cool ads or questions, or what I like to do, obviously, like I said, I love to consume and constantly scrolling, and it's hard to remind yourself that you're not mindless scrolling and you can use it as an opportunity. So anytime I'm scrolling and I see an ad I like, I immediately take that extra step to screenshot it or screen record it, and I save it all down just to always have this folder of inspiration for me and for my team. We're always DMing each other ads back and forth. Even some of my clients DM me ads. So just have your fun on social, but you can always think about it with a marketing lens.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for supporting my wife, Ari. I appreciate it. And just shout out to Ari, who just got promoted today to Chief Growth Officer.
Ari, I'm so proud of her. She is such a force, and I'm lucky to work with her.
Thank you so much, Carly. This has been great. You've been awesome, and I appreciate you.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks so much for listening. Keep tuning in to hear more great insights from the coolest marketers from around the world. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow the Marketing Millennials podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, I would greatly appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating. It helps bring more marketers into our community.